In the icy grip of Helsinki's frozen boulevards, legendary detective Hercule Poirot arrives for a quiet symposium, but steps into a chilling murder mystery. Prominent businessman Victor Koskinen is gunned down on Mannerheimintie, his blood staining the snow, with a mysterious gold cufflink as the only clue. As Poirot assembles the suspects, Victor's elegant widow Elena, shrewd partner Marcus Lindström, estranged son Alexei, and fierce rival Sofia Virtanen, secrets unravel, embezzlement, affairs, smuggling, and deadly betrayals. Footprints in the snow, hidden ledgers, and a near-miss assassination on Poirot himself lead to a shocking revelation by firelight. In a web of deception, the killer's disguise crumbles. Proven even in the frozen north, cold hearts can shatter. Who pulled the trigger? The little gray cells reveal all in this Agatha Christie-inspired tale of intrigue and justice. Chapter 1. The Arrival in the North. The train from Stockholm pulled into Helsinki Central Station with a hiss of steam that mingled with the swirling snowflakes outside. Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, descended onto the platform, his small, neat figure bundled in a heavy overcoat lined with fur. His famous mustaches, waxed to perfection despite the journey's rigors, quivered slightly in the Arctic blast that greeted him. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, adjusting his hat against the wind. "This Finland. It is a land where even the air conspires to freeze the very thoughts in one's head. But Hercule Poirot, he is prepared for all climates, except, perhaps, the chill of human malice." The station buzzed with the subdued energy of a northern winter evening. Porters in thick woolen uniforms hurried past with luggage carts, their breaths forming fleeting clouds in the lamplight. Travelers wrapped in scarves and mittens exchanged quiet words in Finnish, a language that to Poirot's ear sounded like the rustle of pine needles underfoot. He had accepted the invitation from Inspector Aro Järvinen not merely for the symposium on European criminology, but because the inspector's letter had hinted at underlying currents of intrigue in this seemingly placid city. "A quiet gathering," Järvinen had written, "yet one where your little gray cells might find stimulation amid our Baltic mysteries." Poirot signaled for a taxi, his gloved hand cutting through the frosty air. The driver, a burly man with a red nose and a cap dusted in snow, nodded curtly and loaded Poirot's valise into the boot. As the car rumbled along the snow-packed roads toward Mannerheimintie, the grand boulevard that served as Helsinki's pulsating artery, Poirot gazed out at the transformed cityscape. The streets gleamed under a fresh layer of ice, reflecting the glow of electric lamps strung like garlands for the approaching Yuletide season. Shops displayed windows adorned with evergreen boughs and twinkling ornaments, while pedestrians hurried along sidewalks bordered by high drifts. Yet, beneath the festive veneer, Poirot detected a subtle undercurrent, a tightness in the faces of passers-by, as if the long nights and relentless cold bred a quiet vigilance. "First time in Helsinki, sir?" the driver asked in accented English, glancing in the rearview mirror. Poirot inclined his head. "Oui, monsieur, though I have visited many capitals, this one, with its frozen boulevards, holds a certain novelty." The driver chuckled. Novelty wears thin when the mercury drops to -20, but the lights help, makes the darkness bearable. Arriving at the Hotel Kemp, a stately edifice on the boulevard's edge, Poirot alighted and tipped generously. The lobby welcomed him with warmth, polished marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and the faint scent of pine from a decorated tree in the corner. After checking in and ensuring his room was to his exacting standards, hot tisane ready, bed turned down, he descended to the restaurant for dinner. The menu featured local delicacies, smoked salmon on dark rye, accompanied by pickled herring and a glass of crisp aquavit. Poirot savored each bite methodically, his mind already turning over the purpose of his visit. It was then that Inspector Järvinen appeared, striding across the dining room with the purposeful gait of a man accustomed to authority. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a face weathered by years of patrolling icy streets, he extended a hand in greeting. "Monsieur Poirot, a pleasure to see you in our humble city. I trust the journey from Belgium was not too taxing?" Poirot rose, gesturing to the empty chair. "From Brussels to Stockholm, then here. It was an adventure, Inspector, but please join me. A cup of coffee, perhaps, or something stronger to ward off the chill?" Järvinen settled in, ordering a black coffee. "The symposium begins tomorrow at the university. Experts from across Europe, discussions on forgery, poisons, the psychology of the criminal mind. Your insights on the latter will be invaluable." Poirot's eyes twinkled as he twirled his mustache. "Ah, the psychology. It is the key, always. The little gray cells, they discern the patterns where others see only chaos. But tell me, mon ami, is all well in Helsinki? Your letter spoke of a quiet gathering, yet I sense a ripple in the calm waters." The inspector leaned forward, his voice lowering. "Perceptive as ever. There's a matter brewing that might interest you. Victor Koskinen, a leading figure in our shipping industry, controls vast yards along the harbor. Wealthy, influential, but lately plagued by anonymous threats, letters, phone calls, warnings of ruin. Rivalries in business here can turn as sharp as the winter wind." Poirot nodded thoughtfully, sipping his tisane. Threats to a man of means, often the prelude to something more sinister. Family troubles? Competitors? Both, perhaps. His partner, Marcus Lindström, handles the finances. There's talk of strained dealings. Then his wife, Elena, and a son from a previous marriage, Alexei, who's been abroad, and Sofia Virtanen, a rival importer. She's clashed with him over contracts, but nothing concrete yet. The police are watching. As they conversed, the restaurant's ambiance shifted subtly, the clink of cutlery, the murmur of conversations. But Poirot's acute senses picked up a growing unrest. A waiter paused by the window, peering out into the night. Then, abruptly, shouts echoed from the boulevard outside, piercing the din. The wail of sirens followed, slicing through the cold air like a knife. Järvinen stood, his face grim. "Trouble. Excuse me, Monsieur Poirot. I must investigate." Poirot set down his cup, his expression alert. "But of course. And if it concerns your Mr. Koskinen, perhaps the little gray cells may assist." Together they hurried toward the door, the festive lights now casting ominous shadows on the frozen street beyond. Chapter 2. The Body on the Ice. The sirens wailed through the frozen night like the cry of some mythical beast awakened from the depths of the Baltic. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat hastily buttoned and his hat pulled low against the swirling snow, followed Inspector Järvinen out of the Hotel Kemp and into the chaos unfolding on Mannerheimintie. The boulevard, so serene in its wintry attire mere moments ago, now pulsed with urgency. Blue lights from police vehicles flashed across the icy pavement, casting eerie reflections on the snowbanks that lined the street like silent sentinels. A cordon of uniformed officers held back a growing crowd of curious onlookers, fur-hatted pedestrians, bundled families returning from evening outings, and even a few late-night revelers drawn by the commotion. Their faces, illuminated in staccato bursts, bore expressions of shock mingled with that peculiar northern stoicism. "Over here, Monsieur Poirot," Järvinen called, his voice cutting through the wind as he ducked under the tape. Poirot moved with deliberate steps, his patent leather shoes crunching on the gritted path. He abhorred disorder, yet in the midst of crime, it was precisely this chaos that fed his methodical mind. As they approached the center of the scene, the inspector gestured toward a dark shape sprawled unnaturally on the frozen ground. "It's Koskinen, Victor Koskinen, the very man I mentioned." Poirot's sharp eyes took in the tableau at once, committing every detail to memory with the precision of a camera. The victim lay face up on the boulevard's wide sidewalk, his body twisted slightly as if in a final, futile attempt to ward off fate. He was a robust man in his late 50s, clad in a tailored woolen overcoat that had fallen open to reveal a silk-lined suit beneath. Snowflakes dusted his graying hair and the stubble on his jowls, giving him an almost peaceful appearance, were it not for the gruesome wound at his right temple. A single bullet hole, neat and dark-rimmed, marred the skin, from which a trickle of blood had frozen into crimson rivulets on the ice. The pool beneath his head had spread outward, staining the pristine snow in a macabre halo that gleamed under the street lamp's harsh glow. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, kneeling carefully so as not to disturb the scene. He produced a small magnifying glass from his pocket, a tool as indispensable to him as his mustaches. Leaning closer, he examined the wound without touching it, his breath forming tiny clouds that dissipated quickly in the cold. A gunshot, oui, delivered at close range, one would think. Yet observe, Inspector, there are no powder burns on the skin, no stippling from the discharge. The muzzle must have been held at a distance, or perhaps muffled in some way. And the angle, it suggests the shot came from slightly above, as if the assailant were taller, or the victim turning at the last moment. Järvinen nodded, his notebook already in hand as he conferred with a subordinate. Time of death estimated around 8 o'clock, based on witnesses. A few heard what they thought was a muffled crack, like a branch snapping under ice, but the snowstorm would have deadened the sound. No one claims to have seen the shooter. Koskinen was walking alone, they say, heading home from a dinner meeting at a nearby restaurant. Poirot rose, brushing snow from his knees with a fastidious flick. His gaze swept the surrounding area. The boulevard stretched northward, flanked by elegant buildings with frosted windows, their lights winking like distant stars. Footprints marred the snow around the body, Koskinen's own, deep and purposeful, leading from the direction of the restaurant. But curiously, they showed no signs of a struggle. The snow was smooth, undisturbed except for those solitary tracks trailing off into the distance. The murderer approached stealthily, perhaps from a side alley, Poirot mused aloud, or waited in ambush. But in this weather, visibility is poor. How did they strike so precisely without being seen? As the police photographer's flashbulb popped, illuminating the scene in stark white bursts, Poirot's attention was drawn to a small gleam half buried in the snow a few feet from the body's outstretched hand. He pointed it out with his cane. "Regardes, what is this?" Järvinen knelt and retrieved the object, a gold cufflink, intricately engraved with the motif of a ship's anchor, its chain-link attachment snapped as if torn in haste. "It doesn't match Koskinen's attire," the inspector noted, holding it up to the light. "His cuffs are buttoned with plain studs. Could be the killer's? Lost in the act?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Possible, mon ami. Or placed deliberately to mislead. The anchor, a symbol of the sea, of shipping. Given Koskinen's business, it may point to a rival or associate. We must preserve it for fingerprints, though this cold may have erased much." While forensic officers began their meticulous work, sketching the position, collecting samples of the frozen blood, Gervinen pulled Poirot aside to share the initial reports. A constable had already canvassed nearby witnesses. An elderly couple, strolling arm in arm, had passed Koskinen moments before, noting his brisk pace and distracted air, as if preoccupied. A street vendor selling roasted chestnuts from a cart recalled hearing the shot, but mistaking it for a distant firework. No one had seen anyone fleeing the scene. The blizzard had emptied the streets, providing perfect cover for escape. Further inquiries revealed that Koskinen had dined earlier that evening at Ravintola Savoy, an upscale establishment just a block away, known for its Art Nouveau decor and discreet clientele. His companions included his wife, Elena Koskinen, a woman of refined beauty in her 40s, heiress to a timber fortune, his business partner, Marcus Lindstrom, a shrewd financier with a reputation for ruthless negotiations, his estranged son, Alexei Koskinen, a young man of 28 who had recently returned from studies in Paris, bearing the air of a prodigal, and Sophia Virtanen, a formidable rival in the import trade, whose sharp business acumen had often clashed with Koskinen's monopolistic tendencies. The dinner was ostensibly to discuss a new Baltic shipping venture, Järvinen explained, flipping through his notes. But tensions ran high. Witnesses at the restaurant overheard raised voices, something about disputed contracts and personal betrayals. They parted around 7:30, each going their separate ways. Koskinen insisted on walking, claiming the fresh air cleared his head. Poirot stroked his mustache thoughtfully, the gesture a harbinger of his mind's intricate workings. Ah, the classic gathering before the storm. Motives abound. The wife, perhaps weary of a loveless union. The partner, aggrieved by financial discrepancies. The son, nursing old grudges or inheritance woes. The rival, seeking to eliminate competition. We must question them all, Inspector. The truth, it hides not in the snow, but in the warmth of human deceptions. As the body was finally lifted onto a stretcher, covered with a white sheet that billowed slightly in the wind, Poirot felt a pang of sympathy for the man who had met such an abrupt end on this frozen thoroughfare. The crowd murmured as the ambulance doors closed and the sirens faded into the night. Järvinen turned to him. "Will you assist, Monsieur Poirot? Your reputation precedes you. This case could use your expertise." Poirot inclined his head. "But of course, Hercule Poirot does not turn away from murder, especially one so artfully staged amid the ice. Tomorrow, we assemble the pieces. For now, let us return to the hotel. The little gray cells require sustenance and rest." Back in his room, as the fire crackled in the grate, Poirot pondered the cufflink, sketching its design on hotel stationery. The anchor, sturdy, symbolic, yet broken. Like the victim's life, snapped in an instant. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the boulevard in silence, as if the city itself conspired to bury its secrets deep. Chapter 3. The Suspects Assemble. The morning after the murder dawned crisp and unforgiving over Helsinki, the sun a pale disk low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow-laden rooftops. Hercule Poirot, having risen early despite the previous night's exertions, breakfasted in his hotel room on black coffee and crisp bread slathered with cloudberry jam, a concession to local tastes that he found surprisingly agreeable. His mind, however, was far from the meal. It churned with the details of Victor Koskinen's demise, piecing together fragments like a mosaic artist at work. The cufflink with its anchor motif lingered in his thoughts, a tangible thread in the web of intrigue. Inspector Järvinen arrived promptly at 9, his cheeks flushed from the cold, bearing a sheaf of preliminary reports. The autopsy confirms it. Single gunshot to the temple, death instantaneous. No defensive wounds suggesting surprise. Ballistics will take time, but the bullet is from a common revolver. Easy to procure here. Poirot nodded, donning his overcoat. We proceed to the Koskinen residence. We? It is time to observe the suspects in their natural habitat, where grief and guilt may reveal themselves in subtle ways. The mansion stood on a bluff overlooking the frozen harbor, a grand structure of white stone and gabled roofs, its windows framed by icicles like crystalline tears. A butler, solemn-faced and impeccably attired, admitted them into a vestibule warmed by underfloor heating, a modern luxury that Poirot approved of silently. They were ushered into the drawing room, a spacious chamber dominated by a massive fireplace where logs crackled merrily, their flames dancing shadows on walls adorned with maritime paintings, schooners battling stormy seas, harbors bustling with trade. Heavy velvet curtains framed views of the Baltic, its surface a sheet of fractured ice dotted with distant ships. The suspects had been summoned under the guise of formal statements, and they assembled gradually, each entrance marked by the butler's discreet announcement. First came Elena Koskinen, the widow, gliding in with the poise of a ballerina accustomed to the stage. She was dressed in somber black silk, her fair hair coiled in an elegant chignon, her blue eyes rimmed with the faint redness of recent tears. Yet Poirot noted the steadiness of her hands as she accepted a cup of tea from the maid. No tremor, no undue agitation. "Gentlemen," she said softly, seating herself on a brocade sofa. "This is a dreadful business. Victor, he was the pillar of our world. Who could have done such a thing?" Marcus Lindström followed, his arrival heralded by the sharp click of his polished shoes on the parquet floor. A man in his early 50s, lean and angular with wire-rimmed spectacles perched on a hawkish nose, he exuded the air of a banker tallying ledgers, even in mourning. He nodded curtly to Elena before, choosing an armchair by the window, his fingers drumming restlessly on the armrest. "Inspector, Monsieur Poirot, let's get this over with. Business doesn't halt for tragedy, and Koskinen shipping is in disarray without Victor." Alexei Koskinen sauntered in next, his youthful features marred by a sullen expression, his dark hair tousled as if sleep had eluded him. Clad in a rumpled sweater and trousers, he lit a cigarette with deliberate nonchalance, ignoring the widow's disapproving glance. "Father dead on the ice, like some cheap thriller. I flew back from Paris for reconciliation, not this." He exhaled a plume of smoke, leaning against the mantelpiece with affected casualness. Last to arrive was Sophia Virtanen, striding in with the confidence of a captain on her deck. A sturdy woman of 40, with short-cropped auburn hair and a face weathered by sea winds. She wore a practical woolen suit that spoke of warehouses rather than salons. Koskinen was a shark in business waters, she declared without preamble, taking a seat opposite Lindström. But murder? That's beyond even our rivalries. Ask your questions. I've shipments waiting. Poirot, positioned centrally like a conductor before his orchestra, observed them all with his piercing green eyes, noting the interplay of glances. Elena's averted gaze from Alexei, Lindström's furtive assessment of Sophia, the son's defiant stare at the partner. Inspector Järvinen cleared his throat, outlining the facts briefly. The time of death, the solitary shot, the undisturbed snow. Each of you dined with Mr. Koskinen last night. We need precise accounts of your movements afterward. Elena spoke first, her voice measured. After the restaurant, I returned home directly by taxi. The servants can confirm. I retired early with a headache. Victor said he'd walk to clear his mind. He often did in winter. Poirot interjected gently. Madame, your marriage? It was harmonious? No shadows? She hesitated, then met his gaze. Every marriage has its winters, monsieur, but we were devoted. Victor provided everything. Lindström adjusted his spectacles. I went straight to my office on the harbor front. Paperwork from the dinner needed attention. Alone, yes, but the night watchman saw me enter around 8. As for motives, Victor and I built this empire together. Disagreements, sure. Recent deals soured, but nothing fatal. Poirot tilted his head. Disagreements over money, perhaps. Shipping is a volatile trade. Lindström's drumming fingers stilled. Volatile, yes, but murder profits no one. Alexei stubbed out his cigarette. I headed to the National Theater, had tickets for a Strindberg play, sat through the first act, then left early. It was dreadful. Walked to a bar nearby. Bartender knows me. His tone carried a hint of bravado, but Poirot detected a flicker in his eyes. A lie, or merely nerves. Sophia crossed her legs, her boots leaving faint damp marks on the rug. I parted ways outside the Savoy. Drove to my warehouse, inventory check. Workers there until 9. Koskinen and I sparred over contracts, but it's business, not blood. The room fell silent, save for the fire's snap. Poirot rose, pacing slowly. Mesdames et messieurs, the alibis, they are like snow, seemingly solid, yet melting under scrutiny. Madame Koskinen, your servants, did they see you the entire evening? Elena nodded firmly. Lindström, your watchman, did he see you leave? A slight pause. No, but I was there. To Alexei. The theater, your seat number, and the bar. Its name? The young man supplied details, but his fingers toyed with a loose thread on his sweater. Sophia met Poirot's gaze unflinchingly. My workers will vouch. Järvinen produced the cufflink, holding it aloft. This was found near the body. Recognize it? Eyes widened. Elena shook her head. Alexei shrugged. Sophia frowned, but Lindström paled slightly. It resembles one of mine. Anchor design for our firm, but I lost a pair weeks ago. Poirot smiled enigmatically. Lost or left behind, we shall see. As the interviews concluded, Poirot lingered, overhearing snippets. Elena whispering to the butler about arrangements. Alexei stepping out for air. Lindström making a hushed phone call. Sophia departing with a brusque nod. Outside, in the crisp air overlooking the harbor, Poirot confided in Järvinen. The drawing room, it is a stage, and each plays their role. But the script hides twists. Check the alibis meticulously. The cufflink is a clue, but not the only one. Back at the hotel, Poirot requested files on the suspects' backgrounds. Elena's timber inheritance had bolstered the marriage. Lindström's finances showed strains. Alexei's Paris sojourn involved debts. Sophia's imports bordered on the illicit. "The motives weave together," Poirot murmured, "like threads in a finished tapestry." Yet, as evening fell, a new development. A servant from the mansion arrived breathlessly. "Sir, Madame Elena, she's received a threatening note. Silence or join him." Poirot's mustaches twitched. Ah, the plot thickens. The killer fears exposure. Chapter 4. Clues in the Snow. The midday sun hung low over Helsinki, its feeble rays doing little to melt the iron grip of winter on the city. Hercule Poirot, fortified by a luncheon of hearty calacato, fish soup that he pronounced tolerable, though lacking in finesse, set out with Inspector Järvinen to retrace Victor Koskinen's final path along Mannerheimintie. The boulevard, cleared of the previous night's snowfall by diligent municipal workers, now gleamed under a fresh dusting, its surface slick and treacherous. Pedestrians navigated it with care, their boots leaving crisp imprints that Poirot studied as they walked, his cane tapping rhythmically on the pavement. "Observe, Inspector," Poirot said, pausing at the spot where the body had lain, now marked only by a faint discoloration on the ice. The snow here, it was pristine around the victim, save for his footprints. Yet today, with the wind subsided, we see how quickly tracks form and fade. The killer must have been cunning, approaching in a manner that left no trace. Or perhaps the storm erased them. Järvinen nodded, his breath visible in the crisp air. "We've cordoned the area overnight, but nothing new emerged. No weapon discarded nearby, no witnesses forthcoming. The threatening note to Elena, anonymous, typed on common paper. It suggests the murderer believes she knows something." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Or wishes us to think so. Come, let us visit the cafe where Koskinen paused before his demise. The little details, they whisper truths, the grand gestures conceal." The cafe, a cozy establishment named Cavilla Aurora, nestled in a side street off the boulevard, its windows steamed from the warmth within. The proprietor, a rotund man named Eero, with a flour-dusted apron and a perpetual squint, greeted them with a nod. "Ah, the police again? About poor Mr. Koskinen. He was a regular, always black coffee and a pulla bun." Seated at a corner table with steaming mugs before them, Poirot leaned forward. "Monsieur Eero, describe his visit last night, every nuance, if you please." Eero wiped his hands on a cloth. "He came in around 7:45 after his dinner, I'd wager, looked agitated, paced by the window, then took a call on his mobile. Raised voice, yes. Betrayal? You'll regret this. Slammed the phone down, paid, and left briskly. That was it. Out into the snow." Poirot sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "The call. To whom? Did he mention a name?" "No, but he glanced at his watch afterward, as if late for something. Unusual for him, Victor was methodical." Outside once more, Poirot examined the alley beside the cafe, where delivery crates were stacked against the wall. A faint scuff in the snow caught his eye. A boot print, partially obscured by fresh fall, but deeper than the others, as if someone had lingered. "Inspector, photograph this. It may match nothing now, but later." Their next stop was the jeweler's district, a cluster of shops in the city center where finely crafted pieces glittered behind frosted panes. At Kultaseppa Helmi, a venerable establishment specializing in custom work, Poirot presented the cufflink. The owner, an elderly artisan named Mr. Laxonen, adjusted his loop and inspected it closely. Ah, yes, this anchor design. I made a set 2 years ago for Marcus Lindstrom. Gold, 18 karat, with sapphire inlays. Distinctive, only one such pair. Poirot exchanged a glance with Järvinen. And Mr. Lindstrom, did he report any lost? Laxonen shook his head. Not to me, but if one is missing, perhaps a repair order. Armed with this, they confronted Lindstrom at his office in the harbor district, a modern glass edifice overlooking the docks, where cranes loomed like skeletal giants against the gray sky. Lindstrom, poring over ledgers at a mahogany desk, looked up irritably. More. Questions? I've a company to run. Poirot placed the cufflink on the desk with a flourish. This, monsieur, it is yours, confirmed by the maker. Lost at the crime scene. Explain. Lindstrom's face tightened, but he recovered swiftly. As I said, one went missing weeks ago, from my dressing room at home, stolen, perhaps by a servant, or planted to frame me. Victor and I argued over funds, yes. He'd been diverting profits to personal accounts. I discovered it days ago, confronted him at dinner. But murder? I'd lose more alive than dead. Järvinen pressed. Your alibi. The watchman saw you enter your office at 8, but no one saw you inside. And the phone call from the cafe. To you? Lindstrom hesitated. Possibly. An anonymous tip about the embezzlement, but I was at my desk all night. Checked the security logs. As they left, Poirot murmured, He conceals much. Request those financial records, Inspector. The numbers. They do not lie. Back at police headquarters, a nondescript building bustling with officers in woolen uniforms, Järvinen's team had unearthed Koskinen's bank statements. Pages of transactions revealed irregularities. Large sums transferred to offshore accounts, masked as shipping expenses. Lindstrom was right. Embezzlement on a grand scale, Järvinen said, spreading the documents on a table. But look here, some deposits traced to Sophia Virtanen's firm. A partnership in shadows? Poirot's fingers danced over the papers. Ah, the web tightens. And Alexei, his debts? A report from Paris arrived via telegram. The son owed thousands to casinos, with threats from collectors. He returned seeking funds, Järvinen noted. Victor refused per Elena. Speaking of the widow, a discreet inquiry revealed her secret. Meetings with a young painter, Timo Ranta, at a studio in the arts district. An affair? Järvinen wondered. Poirot nodded. Passion. It fuels many crimes, but let us visit her again. At the mansion, Elena received them in the conservatory, a glass-enclosed haven of potted ferns and orchids, a stark contrast to the frozen world outside. She poured tea with steady hands. More intrusions? I've told all. Poirot fixed her with a gentle yet probing stare. Madame, your artist friend, Mr. Ranta, Victor knew? She blanched, setting down the cup. How? It was nothing. A flirtation, emotional support. Victor was distant, absorbed in business, but I loved him still. I'd never harm him. And the note? Silence or join him? Terrifying. I know nothing, truly. As evening descended, Poirot returned to his hotel, but rest eluded him. Over a tisane by the fire, he reviewed notes, the boot print, the call, the cufflink, the funds. The clues in the snow, they melt, but not before revealing shapes. Then a disturbance. The hotel manager knocked urgently. Monsieur, a break-in at the Koskinen home. Papers disturbed in Victor's study. Nothing stolen, but the safe rifled. Poirot dressed hastily and joined Järvinen at the scene. The study, lined with bookshelves and a massive oak desk, showed signs of careful search, drawers ajar, files scattered. Elena, in a robe, wrung her hands. I heard noises around midnight, called the police. Poirot examined the window, forced entry, footprints outside matching the cafe's scuff. The killer returns, for evidence of the embezzlement, or something deeper. Among the papers, a hidden compartment in the desk yielded a letter from Alexei, pleading for money, dated weeks prior. Father, forgive my follies. Help me, or ruin awaits. Yervinin frowned. Alexei lied about reconciliation. Poirot smiled faintly. Or was coerced. The night grows long, but the dawn brings clarity. As they departed, snow began falling anew, cloaking the city in silence. Yet in Poirot's mind, the pieces shifted, forming patterns amid the flakes. Chapter 5. The Twist in the Harbor. The first light of dawn pierced the heavy curtains of Hercule Poirot's hotel room, casting a pallid glow over the scattered notes and diagrams he had sketched the night before. Sleep had come fitfully, interrupted by visions of frozen footprints and glinting cufflinks. But now his mind was alert, the little gray cells humming like a well-oiled machine. He dressed meticulously in a fresh suit, adjusting his tie with precision, before descending to meet Inspector Yervinin in the lobby. The inspector arrived bearing a thermos of strong coffee and a folder of fresh reports, his expression one of determined resolve amid the lingering shadows of the case. Monsieur Poirot, the break-in has yielded fingerprints, partial, smudged by gloves, but we're analyzing, and the boot print from the cafe matches those at the mansion window, size 9, women's style, but deep-treaded, uncommon. Poirot nodded approvingly as they stepped into the waiting police car. Excellent. Today we delve into the harbor, the heart of Koskinen's empire. There, amid the ships and secrets, the twist awaits. The drive to the harbor took them along the coastline, where the Baltic Sea lay immobilized under a vast expanse of ice, fractured in places by the paths of icebreakers. Gulls wheeled overhead, their cries echoing like distant laments, while stevedores in heavy coats unloaded crates from docked vessels, their breaths steaming in the frigid air. Koskinen shipping yards sprawled across the waterfront, warehouses of corrugated steel, cranes towering like watchful guardians, and offices perched on pilings overlooking the docks. The air carried the tang of salt and diesel, mingled with the faint rot of seaweed trapped in the freeze. They began at Victor's private office, a compact space within the main building, furnished with nautical charts on the walls and a desk cluttered with manifests. Yervinin's team had sealed it post-murder, but now they entered, the door creaking on its hinges. Poirot's keen eyes scanned the room, filing cabinets slightly askew, a safe in the corner with its door ajar, untouched since the inventory. The ledger we seek, it may hold the key to the embezzlement, Poirot said, donning gloves provided by the inspector. Methodically, they rifled through drawers, uncovering routine documents, contracts with Baltic ports, invoices for timber and machinery. But in a concealed panel behind a painting of a storm-tossed schooner, Poirot discovered a slim, leather-bound book. Voila, the hidden accounts. Flipping through its pages, he traced entries in Koskinen's precise hand, sums diverted to numbered accounts in Switzerland, annotated with codes. See here, payments to SV, Sophia Virtanen, and withdrawals coinciding with Alexei's debts. But wait, a recent notation. Betrayal confirmed. Confront ML. Marcus Lindström, sans doute. Järvinen whistled softly. This implicates them all. Sophia in smuggling, perhaps. Alexei as beneficiary. Lindström as the betrayed. Poirot pocketed the ledger for safekeeping. We confront Madame Virtanen at her warehouse. The sea air, it loosens tongues. Sophia's operation occupied a neighboring pier, her warehouse a cavernous structure, echoing at the clank of forklifts and the shouts of workers. She met them in a Spartan office overlooking the loading bays, her desk piled with shipping logs. Dressed in a practical jumper and boots, she eyed them warily. Inspector, Poirot, what now? I've alibied out. Poirot placed the ledger on her desk with deliberate care. Madame, these entries, your initials beside illicit shipments, contraband furs, undeclared electronics. Victor was your partner in this shadow trade? Sophia's face hardened, but she leaned back, crossing her arms. Partner? He forced me into it, threatened to expose my early deals unless I cut him in. We argued that night at dinner. He wanted out, said the risks were too high with authorities sniffing around. I stormed off, yes, but he was breathing when I left. Check my logs. Trucks departed at 8, me overseeing. Järvinen flipped through the proffered manifest. Timestamps match, but the threatening note to Elena, "You're doing?" She laughed bitterly. Why? I gained nothing from scaring the widow. If anything, she'd inherit his share. More trouble for me. As they departed, Poirot paused at the dock's edge, gazing at the ice-bound ships. Her denial rings true, but the smuggling, it provides motive for silence. Now, the sun. Alexei was summoned to a nearby cafe overlooking the harbor, arriving disheveled, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep or excess. He slumped into a chair, ordering vodka despite the hour. What more? I've told my story. Poirot produced the pleading letter from the study. This, monsieur, your debts, your desperation. Victor refused aid, yet you claimed reconciliation? Alexei's hands trembled as he lit a cigarette. All right, I forged a letter to myself, hoped it'd sway him posthumously for the will. But kill him? No. I was at the theater, then the bar. Debts or not, he's family. Family, Poirot echoed. Yet Elena mentions your resentment, cut from the inheritance last month. Alexei shrugged. Stepmother's poison. She wanted it all for herself and her lover. Back at the mansion for Elena's re-questioning, they found her in the library, surrounded by shelves of leather-bound volumes, a fire crackling to ward off the chill. She rose gracefully, though her composure showed cracks, faint shadows under her eyes. Gentlemen, progress? Poirot wasted no time. Madame, the affair with Timo Ranta. Victor discovered it. She sank into a chair, her hands clasping tightly. He suspected, yes. We argued before dinner, but it was emotional, not violent. I followed him after the restaurant, along the boulevard, to plead, to explain. But when I reached him, he was already down, blood on the snow. I fled in panic, fear and blame. Järvinen's eyes widened. You were there? Why not report it? Terror, and those footprints, mine, in my boots. But I swear, he was dead. Poirot paced, his mind whirling. The shot, close yet no burns. A silencer, rare here but traceable. Inquiries at underground suppliers, facilitated by Järvinen's contacts, led to a shady importer in the old town. The man, twitchy under questioning, admitted selling a suppressor weeks prior, to a description matching Lindström's build. Paid cash, no name. Confronting Lindström again at his office, they found him packing files, his face ashen. Leaving, monsieur? Poirot inquired mildly. Lindström straightened. Business trip. What now? The silencer. Yours? Järvinen demanded. Denial flashed in his eyes. Absurd. I own no gun. Yet a search warrant, swiftly obtained, uncovered a revolver in his safe, missing one bullet, caliber matching the autopsy. As evening deepened, tension escalated. Poirot, back at the hotel reviewing ballistics reports, preliminary matches to Lindström's weapon, heard a sharp crack outside his window. Glass shattered, a bullet embedding in the wall mere inches from his head. He dropped to the floor, heart pounding, as Järvinen's men rushed in. The killer strikes again, Poirot gasped, rising unscathed, desperate to silence the investigation. Guards posted. They traced the shot to a nearby rooftop, empty save for a discarded glove matching the break-in prints. In the quiet aftermath over cognac in Järvinen's office, Poirot pieced it together. The twists, Elena's presence, Sophia's smuggling, Alexei's lies, Lindström's gun. Yet the footprints, women's boots on a man's frame, disguise. And the call from the cafe to Lindström about the betrayal in the ledger. Järvinen rubbed his chin. All point to him. Poirot held up a finger. But wait, the silencer not used? The shot was muffled by snow-packed barrel, perhaps. We assemble them tomorrow for the denouement. As night enveloped the harbor, ships' lights twinkling like stars on the ice, Poirot retired, the puzzle nearing completion amid the frozen twists. Chapter 6. The Revelation in the Firelight. The drawing room of the Koskinen mansion glowed with the warm flicker of the fireplace, its flames leaping and crackling, as if eager to consume the shadows that had lingered over Helsinki for days. Outside, the winter night pressed against the windows, frost etching intricate patterns on the glass like the delicate threads of a spider's web. Hercule Poirot stood before the hearth, his small frame silhouetted against the blaze, his mustaches impeccably groomed despite the late hour. He had orchestrated this final gathering with the precision of a maestro, summoning the suspects under the pretense of sharing investigative updates. The air was thick with anticipation, mingled with the scent of pine logs and the faint aroma of mulled wine that a servant had discreetly provided. Inspector Järvinen positioned himself near the door, his tall figure a reassuring presence, flanked by two unobtrusive officers. The suspects arrived one by one, their faces etched with varying degrees of weariness and wariness. Elena Koskinen entered first, her black morning gown whispering against the floor, her composure a fragile mask over the strain of recent revelations. She took her seat on the sofa, folding her hands in her lap with quiet dignity. Marcus Lindström followed, his spectacles glinting in the firelight, his movements brisk but betraying a subtle tension in the set of his shoulders. He chose an armchair opposite her, avoiding her gaze. Alexei Koskinen slouched in next, his youthful features shadowed by stubble and dark circles under his eyes, a cigarette already dangling from his lips. He dropped into a chair by the window, exhaling smoke that curled lazily toward the ceiling. Last came Sofia Virtanen, her sturdy frame clad in a simple wool dress, her expression one of guarded impatience as she settled near the fire, warming her hands briefly before crossing her arms. Poirot waited until all were seated, the room falling into a hushed expectancy, broken only by the pop of embers. He cleared his throat softly, commanding attention without raising his voice. Mesdames et messieurs, thank you for assembling here on this chill evening. The murder of Victor Koskinen on the frozen boulevard. It has been a puzzle of ice and deception, where truths have been buried like treasures in the snow. But Hercule Poirot, with the aid of the excellent Inspector Järvinen, has thawed the mysteries. Tonight, we reveal the killer. A murmur rippled through the room. Elena's hand flew to her throat. Alexei's cigarette paused midway to his mouth. Lindström adjusted his glasses unnecessarily, and Sophia leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Järvinen nodded subtly, signaling the officers to remain alert. Poirot began pacing slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, his voice measured and theatrical. Let us reconstruct the events, step by step, using the little gray cells to illuminate the path. Victor Koskinen dined with you, all at the Savoy. Discussions of business, but laced with undercurrents of betrayal. Arguments arose over contracts with Madame Virtanen, financial strains with Monsieur Lindström, familial rifts with young Alexei, and perhaps personal matters with Madame Elena. He left alone, pausing at the cafe for a call, a heated exchange about betrayal. Then, on Mannerheiminti, a single shot felled him, the snow muffling the sound, his body left in the ice with no signs of struggle. He paused, turning to face them. The clues: a gold cufflink with an anchor, lost near the body, confirmed as Monsieur Lindström's, though he claimed it stolen. Footprints, women's boots, size matching Madame Elena's, yet deeper, as if worn by a heavier frame. The break-in at this very home, seeking hidden ledgers, the threatening note to Madame. And last night, a shot fired at Poirot himself, from a rooftop with a discarded glove linking to prior intrusions. Elena spoke first, her voice trembling. But I confessed. I followed Victor, found him dead. My footprints, yes, but I fled in fear. Poirot inclined his head sympathetically. Oui, madame, and that fear was exploited. The killer anticipated such a move, donning similar boots to frame you. Alexei stubbed out his cigarette. Frame? Then who? Not me. I was at the theater, drowning sorrows. Sophia interjected sharply. Nor I. My warehouse logs prove my whereabouts. The smuggling. Victor's idea, but ending it didn't warrant murder. Lindström remained silent, his fingers steepled, but Poirot's gaze fixed upon him. But let us examine the motives more closely. The ledger from the harbor office, it detailed Victor's embezzlement, siphoning funds from the partnership to cover personal luxuries and perhaps aid in illicit trades with Madame Virtanen. You, Monsieur Lindström, discovered this days before, as the anonymous tip to Victor at the cafe confirms. The call was to you, warning of exposure? No. Victor called you, accusing betrayal after learning of your own inquiries. Lindström's composure cracked slightly. Preposterous. I confronted him at dinner, yes, but we parted civilly. Poirot smiled enigmatically. Civilly? Yet you followed him, disguised in boots, pilfered from Elena's wardrobe, perhaps during a prior visit here. You waited in the alley by the cafe, approached silently on the boulevard. The snow deadened your steps. In a brief confrontation, the cufflink tore free in the scuffle. Victor turned. You fired. No silencer needed. The barrel packed with snow from the drifts muffled the shot, a clever improvisation in this frozen climb. The room tensed. Alexei leaned forward. Proof? Anyone could have taken those boots. Précisément, Poirot continued. But the revolver, found in your safe, Monsieur Lindström, matching the bullet caliber, 1 round expended. Ballistics confirm it this afternoon. And the silencer you purchased? A red herring unused, but tracing to you sealed the link. Lindström rose abruptly, his face flushing. Lies, The gun was planted, by her. He pointed at Sophia. She profited from Victor's death, ending the blackmail. Sophia snorted. Blackmail? He was the instigator. I'd have exposed him myself before killing. Poirot held up a hand. Non, madame. The break-in, your glove print, Lindstrom, from the rooftop shot. You feared the ledger's discovery, rifled the study for it, but it was at the harbor. The note to Elena. To silence her suspicions of your affair with her husband? No. To divert us, implying she held secrets. Elena gasped. Marcus? You and Victor? No, it was business rivalry, not... Poirot shook his head. The affair was yours, madame, with the artist, but Lindstrom used it to sow doubt. And Alexei, your forged letter, a desperate bid for inheritance, but innocent of murder. You, young man, were indeed at the bar, confirmed by witnesses. Alexei exhaled in relief, but Lindstrom bolted toward the door, only to be seized by Järvenen's officers. You have nothing solid, he snarled, struggling. The footprints, Elena's size. Ah, but the depth, Poirot countered triumphantly. A woman's boot on a man's foot leaves a heavier impress, as forensics measured. And the phone records, Victor's last call to your office line, time-stamped precisely before the shot. You answered, argued, then pursued. Lindstrom sagged, defeated, as handcuffs clicked into place. He ruined me, years of partnership, and he stole it all. I demanded repayment. He laughed. In the moment, the gun, it was impulse. Järvenen nodded grimly. Impulse or not, it's murder. Take him away. As Lindstrom was led out, the room deflated like a punctured sail. Elena wept quietly. Alexei stared into the fire. Sophia rose to leave with a nod of grudging respect. Well played, Monsieur Poirot. Helsinki owes you. Poirot bowed slightly. The little gray cells, they serve justice, madam. Later, in the quiet of his hotel, Poirot packed for the train south, reflecting over a final tisane. The symposium unattended, but a greater puzzle solved. Outside, the boulevard lay peaceful under fresh snow, its secrets thawed in the firelight of revelation.